This is Mike Sylvia from New Bedford Guide, live with your mayor, Jon Mitchell. We're doing this once a month, every first Thursday of every month. So ask your questions if you have it. So Mayor Mitchell, we've had a storm that didn't quite hit us, which is thankfully, but we did have some damage around the city. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, it's always better when we dodge the storms than have to endure them. But we've kept a close watch on Hermine for a week or so, and we're preparing to be prepared if we had to do something. But fortunately, it didn't drift this way. We had a few things we had to deal with. There was a big light pole down on 195. There were a couple of trees down here and there. Nothing major at all. We shut the beaches down yesterday just because we heard that the surf might cause a riptide risk, and so we didn't want people out there. But people complied with that by and large, and that worked pretty well. The police were out there and the fire department were out there to make sure that happened. But look, we live in a part of the world where we have to pay attention to hurricanes. It's just the nature of it. There's a reason why our hurricane barrier is there, and so we work year round to make sure that we're prepared. And sometimes for me as the mayor, I have to thread the needle between sounding alarmist and not sounding panicking. We want people to take storms seriously. But at the same time, we just want people to be prepared and not to overreact. So that's why we try to message things in the way we do. But overall, we're glad we dodged the bullet.
So this jumps ahead to one of my questions here. So this year we have, there's a ballot question in Massachusetts, there's 4 of them. Yep. One has to do with charter schools. Yep. We have Paul Haas asks, any plans for more charter schools in New Bedford?
No, I think people know my position on charter schools, which is, I'm not totally against charter schools, but I'm against this ballot question. I stand, I think, with every other mayor in the state on this question, as far as I know. And that is the ballot, the threat of more charter schools in New Bedford will put an undue burden on our school district's finances. It will put an undue burden on taxpayers, and not necessarily improve the educational outcomes of our students. I'm convinced of that. Charter schools can be good laboratories. We've got a couple of good ones in the city, and as places where people can experiment with new teaching techniques and new curriculum. That's fine, and there's a place for that. But the wholesale expansion of charter schools, as some of these charter proponents have in mind, is just not something that the city can afford, and that's. Believe me, I mean, if people have been following education reform in the city, it's not. I think folks know that I have no hesitation to push the envelope, to make things happen, to improve our schools, even at political risk. But I think this is the wrong kind of approach.
So Matt asks, so we have a dog park coming, and it's probably looks like more early next year. So he's just asking. We are going to have one. Do you have an update on the schedule on that?
Great question. I don't. I think we're looking at the spring in general. There's some work that needs to be done at the site. It's not major work. There's some remediation that has to be done. It's an older site that was part of the Parker Street waste site at one time, so we have to make sure that we comply with the Mass Department of Environmental Protection's rules concerning the remediation of sites like that. Once that's out of the way, we'll have a dog park up and running, and we'll have a nice ribbon cutting. But it's something that the cities look forward to for a long time. There are lots of folks who want to give their dogs a place to run around and hang out, like so many others have. And it's about time that we have one. So I think we're projecting now springtime. I can't give you an exact date, but we can certainly circle back with you, Mike, and get you a more definitive date.
So if you're on New Bedford Guide's Facebook, if you type dog park, we did do the live stream from the Parks and Recreation down at Buttonwood. The whole plan is there. Go take a look at that video.
Thank you.
Yep. Scott Medeiros asks, any chance of providing some sort of assistance to the New Bedford Police Department for the process of acquiring a license to carry? I guess he's saying 2 days a week for a few hours isn't cutting it. I guess there's not a lot of hours dedicated to LTC, is what he's getting at?
Yeah, so this is the first I'm hearing of that. And look, I mean, like with any other permitting process, people shouldn't have to wait usually a long time. That's something I can look at. It is the first I'm hearing about that, but we'll check into it and get you guys an answer.
So I was going to bring up, someone else was bringing up. So we had 2, I think up to 3 overdoses last Friday on William Street, confirmed 2 of them within 30 minutes by the historic park, right by the Custom House Square. So Jackie asks, how can we make the overdoses stop around here? It's so sad to see that happening.
She's right. It's painful to see people of so many different walks of life having to experience that, and their families having to experience it. I think just about everybody knows somebody who's either OD'd or is related to one. I mean, it's a problem that has been an effort in bailing against the tide in many respects, and therein lies the tragedy. The city is doing a lot, as much, probably more than most places, to deal with it, and it includes an approach that is both rooted in law enforcement and interdiction, going after distributors of heroin and fentanyl. It's also treatment-based. We have a task force that is not just based in New Bedford, but all of Greater New Bedford, that really is about getting people in the right place, whether it's an inpatient treatment or some other program. We also are being aggressive, I would submit, in helping kids make the right choices. We're starting education on opioids, not just in the middle schools, we're actually starting them even in the elementary schools. We're not explicit about it. You don't want to bang kids over the head with such things at such a tender age, but it's not too late in 4th or 5th grade to encourage kids to make the right choices, to say no when they know something's not the right thing for them. But this is a constant battle, and there was legislation a few months ago that helped close off the spigot of prescription drugs in the state, and I think that's going to help. But people need to understand, in closing off the spigot, the water will continue to flow downhill. That means there's still a lot of addicts out there, and including lots of loved ones, people, fathers and daughters and sons and so forth out there that we have to continue to try to help.
And we did just have a big effort in getting synthetic marijuana out of the city. Yeah,
we did. Yeah, thanks for reminding me of that. So that was a measure that the city council and my office worked on, and the health department worked on for a few months. And look, it's just another step to keep kids away from harmful substances in our city. And we have an inspector that we are going to hire whose task will be to make sure that stores aren't violating that rule.
So Jordan Raposa, I don't know if you heard of the House of Bricks Pro Wrestling. So he wants to know how your wrestling skills are doing. I guess they're doing, they do a lot of charity events in the city of New Bedford, and they raise a lot of money. They do it at different bars and outside. They had one at Poor Farm in Wings Court one time.
Oh yeah.
So he wants to invite you down there. We can respond to that later, but you might have to get your wrestling moves down.
He'll be one of the guys that wears the mask.
Yeah. So let's ask, so we just had schools start back up.
Yep.
Tomorrow we got John Hannigan, the old spot elementary, breaking ground tomorrow.
Yeah. So the old Hannigan school was demolished, and there's going to be a new school built there. It will be named at some point. I think we've kept the Hannigan name just so we know we can identify the construction project. But it's about a $45 million project that is funded largely through state dollars through the Mass School Building Authority, as well as through the city. And it's going to be a state-of-the-art school. It's going to be great for that neighborhood. It'll house about 400 students. It'll have these, like the old school, a terrific view of Clark's Cove, way up on the hill where it lies. I think most people are familiar with where it's situated. But look, the city of New Bedford has the oldest stock of elementary schools in the state, and we've gone about the process of replacing them one by one, and it's not cheap, that's for sure, but I believe that we have to get on track to replace that stock of schools so that our kids have the best environment to learn in.
This is a question I always wondered myself. It might sound you might not know, but Teresa Patel asked, why isn't there seatbelts in school buses? I've noticed that too. We all get pushed the thing about seatbelts, but they don't have them in school buses. Never understood that. That's not really an Bedford question.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, it's a fair question. I don't know the answer, and I've never heard anybody say, well, we need them because my kid got in an accident and was injured. If only that they had a seatbelt. I mean, remember, all the seats are pretty padded, right? In most school buses, maybe that's good enough. And of course, they travel on local streets and can't go fast. So, and sometimes kids have to get on and off, and I'm guessing now, I'm speculating, maybe it has something to do with the need to get kids on and off
Yeah.
the bus quickly.
So we've had some teen violence lately. We had Sabrina Da Silva killed by her father, a 19-year-old. You have a 15-year-old stabbed and killed about a week and a half ago. And then on Sunday night, Monday, early morning, we had 5 teenagers, 16 to 18, arrested for attacking 2 people in New Bedford. So is bringing back to school make it less violence for the teenagers, or is there a problem in New Bedford with teenage violence that you think?
Well, so we've done, let me just say a couple things. So it had been a very quiet summer, you know, with the exception of Sabrina Da Silva matter, which was, you know, just such as unusual as it was an awful event. You had a psychopathic father who is admitted now in court to having killed her. A guy who did not live in New Bedford, lived in Danbury, Connecticut. So, you know, that doesn't mark a trend. But some of these other more recent incidents, you know, the incident over at Temple Landing in particular, it concerned me because we have had a very quiet summer, and historically speaking, and so we don't want to, you know, to take the lid off. We have been, the police department under Chief Cadero has done a very good job reaching out and to every neighborhood and making sure that folks are talking, that we keep tabs on people that we might be worried about. And so, no, do I see a trend? No, but people need to know that in order to keep a city safe, you have to be on it all the time. And so when these incidents bubble up, they concern me, and if there are adjustments that we need to make, we'll make them.
Affordable housing, someone's asking Cheryl. What is the possibility of an old elementary school in the South End behind the old St. Anne Church being renovated for affordable housing or transition housing? They say right now it's a big eyesore. I think you've held the ground on no more but no less housing.
Yeah, well, that particular site is that's the old St. Anne's School and St. Anne's Church right there. So that's a site that we'd like to redevelop, not necessarily into housing, but into, you know, something else that will be one of the sites that will be under consideration for the new public safety center in the South End. To be, not saying that it will go there, but that's at least I'm sure that'll be one of the sites that'll be considered. You know, in general, you know, I know there are folks who, you know, want to build out more so-called affordable housing or subsidized housing, build out more housing projects and so forth, and I get that argument. You know, that hasn't been the approach that we've taken because, you know, we in New Bedford still have a number of vacancies. We still have a housing market that is very, very different from the Boston housing market, where there is a big push for so-called affordable units. You know, one of the things that we have to be careful of is that if we're adding lots of subsidized housing in our community, what does it do to the value of other housing in the community? Does it depress it more still? And that tends to be the case. So that's something that we've been very reluctant to do because we want people to have housing. We want people to be coming to our community. We want the housing values to be stable. When housing values are stable, owners invest in their properties and people have better living conditions.
So Chris Swanson asks, when is the EPA going to be finished dredging the river, and what is going to take place there at the end of Sawyer Street?
Well, so it's going to be a while. So the settlement of the case with AVX a couple of years ago accelerated the pace of the cleanup from about a 40-year cleanup to about a 7-year cleanup. They're about a year into the cleanup now, so we're looking at probably about another 6 years. It's a big harbor. AVX and to a lesser extent Cornell Dublier contaminated a whole lot of it over a long period of time, and so it'll take a long time to work on, and we've worked very closely with EPA on the deployment of the cleanup in the harbor, and it is going faster now, and that's encouraging. We've worked with them extensively about the Riverwalk, which we haven't seen much about in the public side, but it's something that we've certainly been working on a lot behind the scenes. And then there's the Sawyer Street site, which is one of their, loosely speaking, decontamination sites. It's right by Market Basket. And once they're done with the cleanup, that site will be decommissioned. The land will go back to the city and it will be open for redevelopment. So, and it's very marketable land. If you think about it, it's right off the highway. It's right next to the grocery store. It's waterfront property. So that's a key site, but it's not going to become available for another several years, probably 6 or 7 years. In the meantime, this EPA is paying us about $500,000 a year to rent the land, so the city's gaining revenue from that, so that's a good thing.
So we had a lot of questions. We talked about the teen violence, and Cahill Rogers asked, with all the violence going on with children, what is your approach on bringing its rate down? Maybe more after-school programs, more in-depth involvement? I know you've had your summer program for employment at some of the parks and the guards on the beach, that kind of stuff. Is there anything during the school year, like after-school programs the city's involved in? Yeah,
there are a number of after-school programs. The Saturday Academy program is one of the big ones that the city runs, and of course, you know, a lot of the youth centers have their programs. And the Boys and Girls Club, the Y, Denison Memorial in the South End. There's also programming at the Andre McCoy Center, and then of course there are lots of programs at each of our schools, in the middle schools. So there are lots of programs. The difficulty is getting more kids in. We want more people to know about the programs. We push the word out, and we don't always get enough people to sign up, because I agree with the tenor of the question. I think, you know, these programs can keep kids occupied. The more, if we can get kids who might otherwise be out in the street into playing sports or doing some other programming, and they exhaust themselves into the evening hours with that, and go home and eat dinner and go to sleep afterward, well, that's a good thing. So, but yeah, I mean, we you know, if people have suggestions about summer program or after-school program, I'm certainly open to them. But those programs are there, and you know, again, we support the programs that are run by others in the community.
Talking about streets, you have a new DPI chief. One asked, will Kushner Avenue ever get repaved? Another one asked, will County Street ever get fixed? That was another question from last month. Yeah,
so let's talk about, I don't need to cut off the question, but so County Street, so that's a real sore spot, right? Because that is it's a very heavily traveled road, right? And it is an eyesore. It's tough on cars. So as a follow-up to our discussion about that last month, what we're going to be able to, so County Street, all of County Street over the next, starting about 2 years from now, running for about 5 years thereafter, will be completely redone, starting in the south end, going all the way up to Klasky Common. So, but that's still a few years out by the time they actually hit that stretch of county near Sycamore Street and Maxfield Street, the Hillman, that area, wherever it's particularly bad. So one of the things that's going to happen in the next few months is that NSTAR, Eversource, is going to go in and be doing some work on the gas main along there. And once they're done doing that, they're going to pave over the half of the street, the east half of the street, where it's really bad right now, and so I think people will see a big improvement. If you're driving County Street, if you're traveling north, it's basically in the northbound lane where it's bad. If you look in the southbound lane, it's not nearly as bad. So we've got to find a way to address it. I think that's probably a good way to do it for the next few years before County Street is completely redone. I'm glad he asked the question, because I wanted to come back to that from last time.
Yeah, plus you usually get short-term pain when you actually have taken up part of the road to fix it. So
yeah, I think so. The whole problem with streets pains me. I think I'll say this: go to other cities and check out their streets, and I think you'll say that things are better in New Bedford. To my mind, that's not good enough. I think we can do better still. The problem is it's just extraordinarily expensive to repave streets, and you know, I mean, money's not growing on trees now. And one of the things that we're trying to do to attack it is to demand more out of the electric utilities that do work in the roads, that cut up the roads. And when those roads are cut and patched back up, it's never perfect, right? So once you basically break that seal, and even if you've done done a nice job patching it back up, those are the places where the potholes start to grow, and that's where the problems happen, that's where the roads degrade. So what we're doing now is just, we've talked to NSTAR about it, and we've said, you need to patch over a much larger stretch every time you cut into the road, so that we don't have these, rapidly deteriorating roads, especially during our winters.
So New Bedford's a big art city, and I know the cultural commission's done really well, murals throughout the city.
Yeah.
Someone asked here, what is the city doing to promote the artists that are starting here? Me and my friends have an art studio. I'm looking for more opportunities to be part of. So it sounds like she's actually from outside the city looking to come in.
Good. So a number of things. So depending on what she does, there are programs that she can get plugged into. So one is through open studios, and some of the and the open studios takes place in a number of places around the city. She should talk to the folks at the Seaport Cultural District, called Dagny Ashley, our tourism director. She's a great person to get plugged in with. There are a number of places. One of the things I will say too is that in June, the City Council, based on my proposal, created an arts fund that we are going to use to promote the arts. We want to hire a cultural coordinator, a position that other communities that have strong arts communities have, and once that position has to get approved by the state legislature. We're still waiting for the state legislature to act. We expect that to happen in the next few months, but once that's in place, we'll hire somebody to coordinate all of these various activities in our arts and the arts realm in our city, whether it's open studios, whether it's some of the public art displays, whether it's arts programming at the Arts Museum, you name it. You can start to pull some of this stuff together, so when you have someone who's coming to town and asking, well, where should I go, there will be a one-stop shop. But in the meantime, what I'd suggest to that person is call our tourism office. That's probably the best place to start, and there are plenty of people to get plugged in with here.
So here's a comment. Tiffany Gutierrez says, I met him, he's cool. So just so you know, you're cool.
Thank you, Tiffany.
Yeah. Looks like it says my son's school bus has seatbelts. So I guess some are having them now, looks like.
Yeah.
So let's jump to some of the big news. Was the airport now is going to do international flights.
Yeah.
So what is that?
So people shouldn't read too much into it. It's not as though they're going to be direct flights from New Bedford to Beijing anytime soon. What it does mean is that we can receive corporate aviation from other countries without having to get customs agents from Boston to come down and to receive the plane and to question the passengers and all that. So it becomes less of a hassle. So it means more corporate traffic. So when these corporate jets come in here, they can park here, they pay the fees to the airport. New Bedford becomes a more desirable, more convenient destination for corporate aviation. That's the bottom line. But it's really one step in a number of steps that are happening at our airport to build it up. We're getting in the process of getting certified by the Transportation Safety Agency, so that people will have magnetometers that bigger airports have, so that passengers can go on commercial flights as they do anywhere else. We're in the process of getting certified under, it's FAA Rule 139. You might ask, well, what's that? It has to do with fire protection at airports. Every airport has firefighters on board. We're trying to figure out a way without imposing on our fire department budget to have fire readiness at the airport, so that we can comply with the FAA rule, but more importantly, we can start to bring commercial carriers to New Bedford. I would like to see New Bedford in the years ahead have commercial flights to other cities, and it can be done without lengthening the runways. It can be done without huge investments. It's a matter of making sure that we comply with all the rules and that we go out there and promote ourselves well.
So here's a good comment. Jacob Haas, he's a good contributor on New Bedford Guide. Keep up the good work, Mayor Mitchell. Downtown Route 18, the Harbor Walk, and numerous other parts of the city look 10 times better now than they did when you took office.
Thank you.
Despite obsessive negativity from townies who comment on MVG, New Bedford the city on the up and up, and a lot of thanks to Jon Mitchell. So we don't get to share a lot of the comments.
I'll take it. Thank you, Jacob.
We'll put that out there. Marijuana facility. Anything new on that? We talked at the Feast Fairgrounds, and before that, It seems to always come up. The city council seems to be pushing it.
Yeah, no, so we've had conversations with marijuana cultivators, which are basically, the factories, and have talked about having some of those sited in industrial areas in the city under the theory that, they're going to set up somewhere and that the threat to neighborhoods isn't what it would be for, let's say, a actual dispensary that might set up shop. So we're having those discussions. As far as the location of dispensaries, I know this one outfit called Beacon was talking to the city council and proposing to build first on Mount Pleasant. Now I think they're looking to move somewhere else. I think what people have to understand is that on the ballot, we talked about ballot questions a couple minutes ago. On the ballot real soon, there are going to be a number of questions. One of them has to do with marijuana legalization. And that's going to change the entire nature of all of these dispensaries. They're going to go from these, purported medical facilities to actual recreational dispensaries, and that changes the nature of that business pretty dramatically. So I don't think we should be rushing into that. I think people should take a look at what happens in November to see whether marijuana is legalized, and then those decisions are going to have to be made, and there may be some zoning questions that have to be addressed. There are a whole host of things. So I think people need to tap the brakes a little bit.
So we have South Coast Rail. So besides the Hannigan Elementary groundbreaking, tomorrow we also have the first of I think 7 South Coast Rail meetings. So it seems like people are pushing east away from the Stoutland route.
Yeah.
Would you have an update at all for everyone?
I don't. I still have lots of questions about the Middleborough route. We don't know how much it's going to cost. We don't know how long that ride will take. We don't know how long it would take to build. And so, I think look, I'm as eager as anybody to see that project done. But I want to know before we completely shift gears here what this new alternative is about. I think there's just a ton of questions to be answered. The other thing I think people should keep in mind is, regardless of the route, as much as we want South Coast Rail, people shouldn't see it as the only state investment that's needed here. We've got a major port here. I think a lot of times we here even underestimate the importance of the port to our regional economy and to the identity of the region. There's a lot of investments that need to happen there, and that would cost a fraction of what the rail project should cost. So we need to be advocating for all these things. Not just the rail, we certainly want to advocate for rail, but these other projects are important too. And I'm talking about things like the replacement of our ancient New Bedford Fairhaven Bridge and the dredging of the harbor and some new port facilities, rail extensions along the waterfront. These are things that I've spent a lot of time working on and talking about with state officials, and I think that's really important that those projects continue to move along and not be crowded out of the discussion because people are focusing entirely on South Coast Rail.
Yeah, if you put $2 billion into South Coast Rail, then the state legislators say, well, no more for you.
Well, that's just it, and so that's why that has been the focus of discussion. Don't talk about anything else because we'll lose our momentum on the rail project. Well, it can't be that way, and it's been that way for a long time. And what I'm suggesting is there needs to be advocacy for all these things.
So John, we'll ask a few more questions,
sure.
And so John Cena is talking about the breweries. We got Moby Dick Brewing Company is going to be on Union Street. We got the Greasy Luck here on Purchase Street. He's asking, do you see it as a good thing or a bad thing?
Oh, I see it as a good thing. I like beer. No, I think it's great. I think New Bedford is long overdue for breweries. It's been, if you go to other cities, I know you do, Mike, it'd be hard to find another American city that doesn't have a brewery, and we're just getting ours now. I actually think that there's room not just for those two, but for others here in the city. There's lots of demand. If you go to the Poor Farm, and I know you do, we see one another there. Or if you go to Rose Alley, these places that have really good beer selections, they have a real following. And I think it just adds some livelihood to our downtown, and they're good investments. They're going to continue to draw people in, so I fully support it.
And it becomes, you can export it out of the area into, we buy stuff from the Cape and Rhode Island, makes New Bedford actually.
And the thing I like about both of those breweries is that they reaffirm the New Bedford identity. You know, in the case of Moby Dick, it's obviously Moby Dick, right? It's a New Bedford styled brewery. The branding is all about New Bedford, and same thing with Greasy Luck. They're both about New Bedford, and so I just hope they make great beer, and knowing the people involved, I'm sure their standards will be very high.
And the Greasy Luck would also be a live music venue. I've talked to the owners, Christian Farland and the folks. We haven't had something since was back in the day. Crickets was kind of a live music venue.
Yeah.
This will kind of be the next thing that'll have live music downtown in a big open fashion. I mean, they do have live music, but it fits 20, 30 people. I think Greasy Luck's like 300 or something like that. So
I think it's good. I think we can stay. You know, I mean, we've been big promoters of live music, as you know, with the concerts on the pier and you know the stuff that we've been doing more recently on Purchase Street and as well as in Custom House Square. We want more live music. I'm all for it.
So September, Suicide Awareness Month.
Yes.
You put out an order kind of to the city to.
Yeah, I think it's worth. You know, we've had. I think this suicide. So there were lots of fill in the blank months over the course of the year. The Suicide Prevention Month is a really important one, it seems to me, because it's an occasion to remind folks who are tempted to take their lives that there's another way, and that there are people who love them and care about them. And it's also a way of reminding their friends and family that to look for signs of desperation, for cries of help. We should keep coming back to this. You know, I had a parent recently that I know, whose family I know very well, wrote me a note, and their child, 8th grader, took her life about a year ago, and it was an awful event, and they're still they will always grieve that event. But she asked me to recognize this month, and we're gonna do that, and it's like the least that I can do. I think it's incumbent upon all of us to be aware of it and take suicide, the risk of suicide, very seriously, and be alert to the signs.
So we got a lot of questions. If you want to go back later and answer some, but I'll end it with this. We had a big announcement today for the wind. So you got
so the offshore wind industry is happening. So the news today was that the big 3 wind developers, the companies that have leased areas of the ocean south of Martha's Vineyard, have signed a letter of intent to use the terminal. So in other words, the New Bedford Marine Commerce Terminal. So whichever one wins the first procurement of electricity from the state, that company will use the terminal, probably for a period of about 2 years. So it means job opportunities for the city. It means spin-off economic development. I think there's going to be more news to come as time goes on. There's going to be work to survey, in the meantime, work to survey the ocean floor out there. There's going to be work to do work along the bulkhead at the terminal. There's going to be work on the terminal, work out at sea. There will be a lot of people poking around in the next couple of years, and you're going to start to see the ramp up of this industry.
Okay, thanks Mayor Mitchell for your time.
Thanks a lot, Mike.